Thanksgiving is a little more than a week away, which basically means this is the time of year where everyone is not only thinking about and talking about food, but literally planning a whole day around food. And I'm not going to lie, Thanksgiving is probably my absolute favorite holiday. But when you're in the middle of a journey to lose weight and get healthy, it can be a challenging time. And well, a couple of weeks ago, I shared some hopefully helpful strategies for making it through the holiday season without going totally off the rails with your health plan. Today, I wanted to focus on a topic that can be challenging even when you think you have a good plan in place: food pushers. I think every family has at least one, and sometimes it's enough to make you want to scream, right? In fact, it can make sticking to your healthy eating plan feel almost impossible, which is why in today's episode, I want to talk about how to handle those situations with grace and confidence and without losing your mind. Welcome to the Feel Better, Live Free podcast brought to you by Thinlicious. I'm your host, Ruth Soukup, and here we'll talk about everything from the science of weight loss to practical tips for making your health a priority in the midst of a busy life. It's a little bit nerdy, a little bit funny, and a little bit revolutionary. So buckle up, friend, because it's about to get real. Hey there, and welcome back to the Feel Better, Live Free podcast. Once again, my name is Ruth Soukup, and I'm the founder of Thinlicious and the creator of the Thin Adapted System, as well as the New York Times bestselling author of 7 books. And I'm also a 40-something-year-old woman who knows exactly how hard it can be to lose weight and get healthy because I struggled with it for a long time. And if you're new to this podcast, then you might not know my whole story yet, but the short version is that I spent years and years and years trying to lose weight and get healthy, and I tried everything. I did all the diets, I drank all the shakes, I counted all the calories, I joined Weight Watchers, I went to the gym, I hired a personal trainer, I did the fat flush diet, I went vegan, I did the keto diet, I even did the cabbage soup diet. And I always felt like I was failing because no matter what I did, I could never stick with it. I'd lose a few pounds and then gain it all back, and it was so frustrating. And maybe you can relate because it's so easy to feel like it's your fault, like you're just not trying hard enough, or you don't have enough willpower, or you're not strong enough to stick with it. And then one day, I finally decided that I was done. I was done with all the diets that weren't working. I was done with beating myself up. I was done with feeling like crap. I was done feeling like a failure. And I decided to do something different. I decided to do my own research and really try to understand the science of weight loss and metabolism and how the food we eat affects our bodies. And I decided to change my lifestyle, not for a month or for a year, but forever. And it worked. I lost 40 pounds and I have kept it off for years now without ever dieting or counting calories or going back to what I now call the standard American diet. And not only that, I feel better than I have ever felt in my life. I have more energy. I sleep better. I don't get sick. I don't have aches and pains. I don't get heartburn. I don't get bloated. I don't get migraines. I don't get hangry. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about this and about helping other women get healthy and lose weight the same way that I did. Because I know what it's like to struggle with your weight and with food. And if that's something you're dealing with, then I want you to know there is a better way. You don't have to keep struggling, and it is not your fault. You just need to educate yourself and understand the science behind it all so that you can make informed decisions about what's going to be best for your body. And honestly, that's a big part of the reason I wanted to record today's episode, because I know that one of the biggest struggles for a lot of women is dealing with the people in your life who just don't get it, who don't understand why you're choosing to make your health a priority, who don't understand why you're choosing to eat a certain way, who don't understand why you're not choosing to eat the way that you used to. And it can be really hard. It is hard to feel like you're being judged. It is hard to feel like people are trying to sabotage you. It is hard to feel like you're being left out or you're not part of the group. And it can be hard to feel like you're having to defend your choices all the time. And so I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about how to deal with those food pushers and the people in your life who just don't get it, and how to do it without losing your mind in the process, right? Because the truth is that it doesn't have to be so hard, and you can stick to your healthy eating plan no matter what anyone else says or does, even over the holidays. But before we dive into that, there is one quick thing I do want to mention, and that is that if you are new to this podcast and to Thinlicious and to this way of eating that we talk about a lot on this podcast, then I have a really great resource for you that I think you'll find super helpful. It's called Flip the Switch, and it's basically a quick start guide that is packed with all the good stuff that you need to know about how to really understand how our program works and why it works, and how to get started in a way that is actually going to set you up for success. It's really, really good. And like I said, it's free. So all you have to do to get it is go to thinlicious.com/guide. One more time, that is thinlicious.com/guide. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk about how to deal with food pushers without losing your mind. And honestly, I think that the first thing you have to realize is that food pushers are kind of everywhere and they come in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes it's your friends who just don't get why you're choosing to eat a certain way, or who feel like your new healthy lifestyle is somehow a judgment on their choices. Sometimes it's your family who can't seem to wrap their heads around the fact that you don't want to eat the same things that you used to eat. Sometimes it's your coworkers who are constantly bringing in donuts and cake and pizza. Sometimes it's the waiter at your favorite restaurant who just can't understand why you don't want to order the pasta or the bread or the dessert. Sometimes it's the person sitting next to you on the airplane who can't seem to stop offering you all the snacks, right? Sometimes it's even your kids who don't understand why you don't want to eat their cereal or Pop-Tarts or mac and cheese anymore, right? But no matter who it is or where it's coming from, it can actually be really hard to deal with. And it can be really hard to stick to your guns and not give in, especially if you're feeling tired or stressed or overwhelmed, or you're just not in the mood to have to defend your choices, or you're a people pleaser. But the truth is, you don't have to defend your choices. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to give in. You don't have to let other people's opinions and judgments and pushiness get the best of you. Because the reality is that what other people think or say or do absolutely has no power over you unless you let it. And I think that is really kind of the first thing that we all have to realize, right? Is that you are in control. You get to choose what you eat and what you don't eat. You get to choose how you respond to other people. You get to choose how you feel. You always have a choice, even if sometimes it doesn't feel that way. And I know that can be easier said than done, especially if you tend to be a people pleaser, or if you've struggled with your weight for a long time, or if you have a lot of emotional baggage around food. But it's so important to really understand that you are in control and that you have the power to change your thoughts and your feelings and your actions, right? You have that power. And honestly, that's the second thing that you have to do, is really work on changing your thoughts and your feelings about the situation, which again, you have the power to change your thoughts, but you have to change your thoughts so that you can respond in a way that feels good to you and that allows you to stay true to your goals and your values. Because the reality is that most of the time when somebody is pushing food on you, it's not actually about the food. It's about them. It's about their own insecurities and their own issues. It's about the fact that they don't feel good about themselves, so they want to try to bring you down to their level. It's about the fact that they don't want to be the only one eating the donuts or the cake. It's about the fact that they feel threatened by your choices because it makes them question their own choices. And once you can understand that, it actually becomes a lot easier to respond in a way that's both confident and empathetic. Because most of the time, the person who is pushing food on you is not actually trying to hurt or sabotage you. They're just trying to make themselves feel better, and they're just doing it in a really crappy way. But once you can see that, it actually becomes a lot easier to have some compassion and some understanding for where they're coming from and to not take it as personally. So let's talk about some practical tips for how to deal with food pushers in a way that allows you to stay true to your goals and your values. The first tip is to be confident in your choices. And again, I know that is easier said than done, especially if you are new to this way of eating, or if you're still struggling with your weight, or if you have a lot of emotional baggage around food. But the reality is that confidence is a choice. You get to choose to be confident even if you don't always feel that way. It's that old fake it till you make it mentality. And I do believe that one of the best ways to do that is to really take the time to educate yourself, not just about the science behind our program and why it works, but also about the science of weight loss and metabolism, and about how the food we eat affects our bodies, because the more you understand, the more confident you will be in your choices, and the easier it will be to respond to other people in a way that feels good to you. And honestly, that's one of the reasons I put together that free guide that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, because I know that the more you can educate yourself and really understand how all this works, the more confident you will be in your choices and the more likely that you will be to stick with it. It's also why in our program, we take so much time to talk about the science, to go really in depth about all the things so that you really understand it, because that knowledge is power. So that's the first thing. Really take the time to educate yourself and get confident in your choices. The second tip for dealing with food pushers is to set boundaries. And this is something that a lot of us struggle with, especially, again, if you tend to be a people pleaser or if you've been in the habit of just going along with what everyone else wants, even if it's not what you want. But the reality is that setting boundaries is so critically important, not just for your own mental and emotional health, but also for your physical health and well being, because no one else is going to set those boundaries for you, right? That's the truth. You have to do it for yourself. And so that might mean saying no to certain foods or saying no to certain situations, even, or saying no to certain people. And I know that can be really hard, especially if it's your family or your friends or your coworkers. But the reality is that if they truly care about you, they will respect your boundaries. And if they don't, then it says a lot more about them than it does about you. So that's the second tip: set boundaries and stick to them. The third tip for dealing with food pushers is to always, 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 always have a plan. And what I mean by that is to always know ahead of time what you're going to say or do in certain situations so that you're not caught off guard or feeling flustered or overwhelmed. And honestly, I think this is something that a lot of us don't always do, right? Because we tend to think we can just wing it or go with the flow, or we're busy or we're last minute and we're not really thinking about what's going to happen. But the reality is that when it comes to food, and especially when it comes to dealing with food pushers, it is always best to have a plan. So, for example, if you're going to a party or to a social event or Thanksgiving dinner and you know that there could be some food pushers there, then have a plan for what you're going to say when they offer you something that you don't want to eat. It could just be something as simple as no thanks, I'm not hungry right now, or I've had enough, or no thanks, I don't eat that. Or you could just say no thanks and leave it at that. That is a full sentence, right? No is a full sentence. But the key is to have a plan and stick with it. Maybe even practice it if it's really hard for you, but stick with it no matter what. Because the reality is that most of the time, the food pushers will back off as long as you are confident and consistent in your response. So that is the third tip: have a plan of what you're going to do. The fourth tip for dealing with food pushers is to just bring your own food, right? And this is something I think a lot of us are afraid to do sometimes because we don't want to be seen as high maintenance or difficult. But the reality is that most of the time people don't care, right? They're more than happy to let you bring your own food, especially if you're sharing it with everyone else. Luckily, most people hosting Thanksgiving dinner actually want and expect everyone else to bring at least a dish or two to share. So just feel free to go a little overboard and make sure that there will be lots of great options for you to choose from. And not only will this take the pressure off of you to actually find something to eat, right? It will also show your host that you care and that you're making an effort to be part of the group, even if you're not eating exactly the same things. So that's the fourth tip: offer to bring your own food. And the fifth and final tip for dealing with food pushers is to find some accountability, right? Find an accountability partner or somebody who can just be kind of your support person. And I think this is something that's so important, especially when you're first starting out on your health journey and you just need that extra support, that extra encouragement. It is so much easier to stick to your healthy eating plan when you have somebody else who's going through it with you and who's helping you to stay on track and who's supporting you and encouraging you and reminding you of your goals and your values and can help you come up with a plan for dealing with food pushers. And it doesn't have to be someone in your real life, right? It could be a friend or a family member who's close by. It could be your spouse, or it could be somebody far away, right? It could be somebody in an online community or in a Facebook group. It could be a coach or a mentor. But the key is to find somebody who has your back and who can help you navigate the challenges of dealing with food pushers and all of those other emotional things that come up, especially this time of year. So those are my 5 tips for dealing with the food pushers. Be confident in your choices, set boundaries, have a plan, offer to bring your own food, and find an accountability partner. And honestly, I think the more you can focus on just being confident and consistent in your responses, and the more you can focus on taking care of yourself and setting boundaries, the easier it's going to be to deal with food pushers. And the more likely you will be to stick to your healthy eating plan, no matter what anyone else says or does. All right, friends, that is it. It's a short little episode, but hopefully impactful, and hopefully it will set you up for success with Thanksgiving coming up next week. And if you found this episode helpful, I would love it if you would take a second to share it with anyone you know or someone who might find it helpful as well, maybe your accountability partner. And then don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you like to listen so that you don't miss any future episodes. And I will see you back here very soon for another new episode.